It's very shocking right now, the fact that he did. I mean it. I never thought that he would end up dead. I figured if he eat his own, I even Googled it, like, will it hurt you? And they was like, nah, you know, to a certain extent, you know what I mean? Just to see, because, I mean, I was to the point where, what am I supposed to do? Call the police and be like, oh, my son is over here eating this shit again today?
This is one of the most horrifying cases ever reported of child neglect, torture, abuse, and murder. The man under interrogation is the father of a 10-year-old boy who was pronounced dead at the hospital after suffering from unimaginable injuries at his hands. Mutahan McLean appeared disturbingly calm, as if detached from the interrogation room, spinning one lie after another to explain away the solid evidence stacked against him. The tragic and gut-wrenching incident revealed acts of torture so extreme that even an adult would not have survived.
So, I was going to call 911. I started to call him. I said, let me check him out. Make sure he not faking me.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because I wasn't sure if he was faking me or not. Because like I said,
what were you calling 911 for? Because you said he was normal.
Now, the reason I was going to call 911 is because, you know, he been throwing up and like I said.
When did he start throwing up?
When did he throw up?
Yeah.
Remember when I told you he pushed off his bed and I checked on him, I seen throw up come out of his mouth?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure before I wasted the authorities' time that he was not playing around. So I'm like, you know, it is normal. You feel me?
There were no apparent signs of remorse on his face. Was the father solely responsible for this chilling murder? Or was someone else involved in what is now one of the most shocking and tragic cases ever uncovered? On December 13, 2019, a frantic call came into the 911 dispatch in Ohio. A distressed father claimed his 10-year-old son was not responding. As the operator kept him on the line, guiding him through CPR instructions, the man repeatedly brought up how hard it was for him to raise his son, and that his stomach was rotting and smelled terrible. He was more focused on complaining about how difficult his son was rather than his life or death condition. When officers arrived at 1934 Kensington, they were met with a scene far worse than they could have imagined. Dakota, lying lifeless on the floor in a condition that left them horrified. The father's 911 call came after he realized that this time his son wouldn't survive another round of his brutal beatings. When the paramedics arrived at the house, they found Mutahan standing by the door, waiting for them. Meanwhile, his unresponsive child, covered in severe injury, was left alone in the living room, taking his final, painful breaths in what would be the tragic end of his short life.
No, they just told me he did, but they didn't tell me what killed him or anything like that, you hear me?
As the paramedics rushed inside to try and save the child, one officer stayed with Mutahan on the porch. There, he began questioning him, pressing for answers about the horrors that had led to the boy's fatal condition. But the father, still failing to understand the gravity of the situation, continued his complaints about Dakota, calling him an uncivilized child who was difficult to parent. One thing he would repeat, even during his interrogation, was how Dakota used to eat his own feet regularly.
Where, what am I supposed to do? Call the police and be like, oh, my son is over here eating this shit again today?
When inquired about the bruises covering Dakota's body from head to toe, Mutahan had his cover story prepared that Dakota had inflicted the injuries on himself as part of what he described as an uncontrollable child putting on a show to seek attention. These accounts were deeply disturbing. While the paramedics' focus was on the hanging life of Dakota at that moment, it was clear to them that something sinister had taken place behind the closed doors of the house. The evidence of abuse couldn't be more visible. Despite their efforts, Dakota tragically lost his battle to the injuries. When the paramedics broke down the death news to Mutahan, his reaction was chilling, far from what is expected from a grieving father. In his own words, he said, "All right, I tried to get you guys here as fast as I could." Meanwhile, the paramedics, refusing to give up on Dakota, rushed him to a children's hospital in an ambulance, doing everything they could to revive his breath. Tragically, their efforts were in vain. Dakota was ultimately pronounced dead, with blunt force injuries as the cause of his death.
This is the most horrific case of abuse and torture this court has ever seen.
The real, gruesome details were revealed at the hospital, where the medical examiner's report following an external examination of Dakota's body would send chills down anyone's spine. He had been beaten so severely that no part of his body was untouched by bruises. The medical experts were certain that the nature of some injuries made it clear they could not have been self-inflicted by a 10-year-old. Dakota was even hit on those areas that would not easily bruise. He had been through extreme torture. Half of the details in the report are too graphic to describe fully. Investigators pointed out that most of the injuries were on body parts that a person might use while trying to protect themselves from powerful blows. His backside was covered with such wounds, and his ribs showed clear signs of prior fractures. This was just the beginning of the horrors that investigators would slowly uncover. Back at the crime scene, while officers remained with Mutahan, 2 women and a 3-year-old boy had made an entry to the house. The boy, later identified as JN, was revealed to be Mutahan's brother. At first, the police were skeptical, as he had previously claimed that he lived alone with Dakota. However, it soon became clear that the 2 women, his girlfriend, Amanda Hinze, and her sister Jennifer, also lived at the residence. Born on December 18, 2008, Dakota Collins was neglected by both sides. His parents, both struggling with substance abuse issues, failed to provide the care he needed. His mother, Robin Collins, subjected him to physical abuse and battery, for which she was sentenced to just a year of probation. Afterward, Dakota was placed in state custody, only to be later taken in by one of Robin's friends, Anita Bredesen. Throughout his tragically short life, the only moments of love and care he experienced were with Anita and her fiancé, who offered him the closest thing to a stable and loving home.
People need to know that Dakota was very, very loved. He never wanted for anything. He was a happy child, even when he was in foster care.
Later, Mutahan wanted his son's custody, which he ultimately got despite his criminal record. By the end of 2011, he had already served time in jail for previous offenses. His criminal history was extensive, including an incident where he had beaten and choked a man he accused of stealing his phone. As Dakota started to live with his father, things took a turn for the worst. Within days, Mutahan began showing his violent tendencies. He dragged Amanda by her hair and hit her with a pipe while forcing her to sit in a car. But despite the abuse, Amanda decided to stay with him. She moved into his home to become an accomplice to his crimes. Amanda and Jennifer lived in the house, acting unaware of the terrible abuse Mutahan had unleashed on Dakota. They were equally responsible for subjecting the child to unbearable torture, pushing him to the point where he could no longer bear it. While they didn't hit him themselves, they kept watch during his punishments and reported everything to his father, so he would face even worse beatings. They knew about all the terrible things happening to the child, including Mutahan, forcing him to eat his feces, and they still chose to stay silent and do nothing. From watching him starve to witnessing him being thrown around, they remained cold and heartless, offering no kindness to the boy who was clearly crying out for help. Amanda, the woman Dakota used to call his mother, did everything except fulfill the promise she made to his maternal grandmother. Instead, Dakota saw her showering love and care on another child, while he received animalistic treatment from her. Meanwhile, Jennifer would only allow him to roam the house when JN wasn't around because he smelled. As someone who spent more time at the house, she, instead of acting as a caregiver for Dakota, made his life more miserable. Ironically, on the day of her arrest, she was found wearing a shirt that read, "I'd help, but I don't want to." It was later revealed that when Dakota was taking his final breaths, Amanda and Jennifer were both at home. Amanda had woken Jennifer, who had fallen asleep after witnessing Mutahan's brutality on the monitor. Both had fled the house before the arrival of paramedics. They could have taken this as their last chance to right their wrongs and save Dakota's life, but they chose to run instead. The police waited for a warrant to search the entire house. At first glance, everything seemed normal. The house was well furnished with a security system that provided live updates from outside. It had walls with family portraits, but none of them had a sign of Dakota's existence in it. When the officers made their way upstairs, they found rooms furnished with all the essentials, including a toddler's room filled with toys and clothing. However, what caught their attention was the complete absence of anything belonging to Dakota. There was no school bag, clothes, toys, books, nothing that could be linked to him. They even searched the basement, but it was only set up for the dogs. Then the officers decided to check the attic, and what they found there would become the true horror of the case. It was the place where Dakota had been forced to live. The detectives were immediately hit with the unbearable smell of human waste coming from the attic. There were no lights in the space, and the only visible object was a broken chair nearby. As they flashed their torches around, the officers discovered piles of feces, urine, and bugs scattered throughout. The area was completely unfit for any human to live in, let alone a 10-year-old boy. The missing pieces of the broken chair would later be found downstairs, revealing a gut-wrenching reality. One of the chair's legs, hidden beside a TV and laundry basket, had been used for something far more sinister. Inside the attic, the officers discovered another hidden room, locked from the inside. When they gained access, they were horrified by what they found: a ground sheet that served as Dakota's bedding. A CCTV camera was also discovered in the room, which not only Al Mutahan but also his accomplices, Amanda and Jennifer, used to monitor Dakota's every move. The detectives knew this was just the beginning of the nightmare they still had to uncover in this shocking case. The investigators knew that this was a case of homicide and not an accident, as Al Mutahan was desperately trying to convince them otherwise. He, along with the two women, were brought in for questioning, a session that would expose the true extent of their cruelty.
So I see him doing that. I'm paying no mind. I'm like, I didn't think he was hurting himself at all. So I'm like, what is he finna do?
You didn't think he was hurting himself?
Not at the time.
Okay.
I'm thinking in my head, like, what could he possibly be doing with that? Okay. So, all right. I'll get up around, say about 8 o'clock. Go get him his breakfast and stuff like that. So I go up there, and he's laying on his tarp, and he got it in his butt. I'm like, what the hell do you think you're doing? I say, pull it out right now. He wants to get the wrestling, and you know what I mean? Either way.
I don't know what you mean because I don't live in your house. So.
Well, he want to get wrestling and aggressive. Like, he don't want me to take it out of him, and he don't want me to have it, period. So I grab it out. Squirt. Yup. And it started dripping. So put him in the shower. I put him in the bathtub, and I tried to clean it up and look at it to see if it was worth me taking him to the ER right away. But to the eye, I'm not a doctor. It didn't look that bad. So I'm just thinking.
What did you see?
Just like his butt hole with a little blood. Because I checked it out afterwards. I'm like, whoa, let me see. And she then did. And it was just a little swollen.
Okay.
So
you didn't see any injuries or anything?
Nothing too heavy. I seen his butt swollen and his legs and his arms and all that, but I see that every day.
Okay.
It's not a day where he is not gonna add another one.
Okay.
And here's the thing, as a parent, I'm afraid, I was concerned, like, damn, if I take him anywhere, they're gonna be looking at me like I did this. You know what I mean?
He had prepared an explanation for every injury found on Dakota's body. But seasoned investigators know that abusers often try to cover up their crimes with lies, twisting the truth to shift blame. Both Amanda and Jennifer also hid the truth during their interrogations to cover up their involvement in the abuse.
So today a 10-year-old who's going to be 11 very soon, is that correct?
18.
Lost his life somehow. And has marks all over him that couldn't be self-inflicted. So I'd like to know how that happened.
Please, please. Always said he just likes getting in trouble.
Is this your way of thinking where he was acting up, or is this what Al says? Like he keeps acting up? Like where are you getting that that's acting out for him?
That's what Dakota always says.
Dakota would say what? I'm
that
sorry.
he does it just to get his beatings, and he just, I guess he always, I don't know, he just always said that he...
When did he say that?
At the same time, the investigation was stretched further where everyone involved in Dakota's life was interrogated, including his teachers in school. The school staff recalled that Dakota would always arrive with the smell of human feces on him, and most of the time he was found covered in dirt. The school management tried to get involved by offering help to Al Mutahan, but he never allowed them. Dakota would always be seen in strange haircuts, about which Al Mutahan would ask teachers for their feedback on, because he wanted his son to be ridiculed in front of everyone. He looked forward to complaints about Dakota's misbehavior, as it gave him the excuse to beat him up and torture him in the worst possible ways, all in the name of discipline. The severe abuse was a daily ritual for Dakota. Every day he was forced to stand in the living room for hours, his arms stretched wide and a heavy bag of books hanging from them. But this wasn't a case of hidden abuse. Child Protective Services were well aware of the family, as they had been called multiple times before. However, each time Mutahan, Amanda, and Jennifer managed to convince the authorities with their cover stories. At times they would lock the children away to keep them out of sight, and whenever Dakota was questioned, they would force him to narrate a pre-planned story.
Well, CPS, only the 30, 40 times they came to my house, but they never found me to be an unfit parent or, you know what I mean?
Whenever medical or psychological assistance was offered, Mutahan would straight up refuse the services. In May 2018, sensing that things were starting to spiral out of control, he withdrew Dakota from school, claiming it was for homeschooling. In reality, this decision meant Dakota would suffer even more abuse. He was locked in the attic all day and forced to eat his feces. There came a moment when Dakota could take no more. In a desperate attempt to escape, he jumped from the window of the attic. But he was taken to the hospital and later had to bear the consequences of his failed attempt in the form of double torture. His clothes were taken from him and his window was sealed shut, making sure there would be no way for him to run away again. Mutahan created a twisted disciplinary system that guaranteed Dakota would suffer no matter what. Dakota was forced to walk around naked, but there was an exception. He had to wear clothes when coming downstairs. However, Mutahan made sure to strip him of all his clothing, leaving Dakota with no choice but to be subjected to harsher punishments. He was made to stand in painful positions for hours on end. Mutahan had turned his own home into a house of horrors, where his son's pain seemed to serve as his twisted form of control. To further degrade him, Dakota was only allowed to use the restroom once per night. Surveillance cameras were set up to monitor his every move, and any slight movement would result in even more severe punishment. The abuse escalated to horrifying levels in the days leading to Dakota's death. Desperate to avoid further beatings, Dakota gave in to eating his feces. The day before his tragic death, Mutahan was consumed by so much rage that it eventually resulted in Dakota's death. His girlfriend admitted that she witnessed the hard punch he had launched into Dakota's stomach. It was hit with such force that he was unable to walk properly the next day or even follow physical commands. Angered by his son's disobedience the next day, Mutahan stabbed Dakota's back, applying all of his 200-pound weight onto his spine. Still not satisfied with the torture, he then poured hot sauce all over Dakota's back and genitals. Mutahan didn't stop here. He then dragged him downstairs, took him straight to the bathroom, and forced his head inside a water-filled tub only because Dakota wasn't fast enough to act on his orders. After that, he took him back to his attic, where he grabbed a broken leg of a chair and inside him from behind. Mutahan had raped his son until that broken piece had blood on it. Jennifer witnessed all these in the CCTV footage but didn't stop him. This injury would become fatal for Dakota, as it had caused severe internal damage. But during the interrogation, Mutahan stuck to his made-up story, trying his best to make it look like it was Dakota who had hurt himself.
Alright, so look. He had, a chair like this.
Right.
You take the back off, that's gonna sit flat on the ground.
Okay.
And I seen him going like this, you hear me? I wasn't telling it, I wasn't able
So
to
he's
tell.
putting the chair leg in his
Yup.
That's what you're saying he's doing.
Yep.
So this morning at 6 a.m. you see him, and I'm using your words, on this chair.
Not quite sure. I seen close to it, and that's what it looked like to me. It
So
just
you've
looked
seen
like,
him do this before?
yeah, but usually with his fingers, and he tried a couple of toys one time. I told social services, I mean, they like, you can't stop him from being gay or you know what I mean?
So you think he's doing this because he's gay?
I'm not sure if he wanted to hurt his, I know he liked to hurt himself every day. It's a combination.
Dakota's mother, Robin, had long suspected her son was being mistreated by his father.
I believe that his father is abusing him and hurting him, and that he's too scared to tell anybody because his father won't let him talk to anybody. I've been trying to work with him to talk to my son, and he gave me a bunch of things that are very concerning. He locked him in his room. He tried to jump out a window. He sent him to school in a diaper. He pulled him out of school. Just a bunch of stuff that's very concerning to me.
Despite multiple welfare checks and her attempts to regain custody, authorities failed to act. As per her, Mutahan was awarded custody of Dakota. even though he also had a criminal record, just like her.
Telling him how angry he is with him and how if I don't come and get him, something's going to happen and he's going to take him to a group home and drop him off, and how when he acts up, how he disciplines him with a and he'll lock him in the room.
She now lives with the regret of not taking her son away from his monstrous father. She believes that if she had just taken Dakota, even if it meant kidnapping him from Mutahan, she could have given him a better life. On December 14th, all 3 accomplices in the crime were arrested and charged. Despite refusing his involvement during the interrogation, Mutahan eventually pleaded guilty to murdering his child. With parole eligibility after 51 years, he was sentenced to life in prison for sexual assault, homicide, and putting a minor in an endangered situation. He was registered as a Tier 3 offender.
All right, man. Go stand up. Put your hands behind your back. We're going to take you to the valley, get you checked out. All right?
Can you tell me why I'm being charged with?
Right now, murder and child endangering. Yes.
What does murder mean? Like
Murder means you killed a child.
I planned it?
What's that?
That means I planned it or something?
No, I didn't say you planned it. All I'm saying is that you murdered your son.
His girlfriend, Amanda, was sentenced to 22 to 27 years in prison for playing her part in isolating the victim. She pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter. Her sister, Jennifer, who also pleaded guilty, was sentenced to 8 years in jail. This heartbreaking case led to the passing of a new bill in Ohio, mandating that children and family services must work closely with law enforcement when handling child abuse cases. The parents and guardians failed Dakota Collins and the system as well. Could this tragedy have been prevented earlier? In the comments section below, please share your thoughts on the case.